Hi there, my name's Danny. I'm an indie app developer and I create all of my apps for iOS, Android, Mac and Windows using Quasar Framework. And here on YouTube I'm going to be sharing 10 modules from my full course on Quasar Framework version 1, in which I'm going to show you everything you need to know to start building real-world apps using Quasar on all the different platforms. I'm going to be releasing the first 2 videos straight away, but the rest of them will be released over a series of weeks. So if you're watching this in the present, make sure you click the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the videos in this series. And if you're interested in the full course, make sure you click the link at the top of the description. Hello there, my name's Danny. Welcome to this course on Quasar Framework version 1. In this course I'm going to show you everything you need to know to start building real-world apps using a single Vue.js codebase and how to deploy these apps to the web, iOS, Android, Mac and Windows. Throughout this course we're going to be creating a real-world app called Awesome To Do. In this app we can add a task with a due date and a due time. We can mark tasks as completed. We can edit tasks. And we can delete tasks. We can also sort tasks by name or date using this drop-down. And we can search through tasks using the search bar. It's also going to have a settings page with 2 real settings which change the way the app works, such as displaying the tasks in a single list instead of 2 separate lists. It's also going to have a help page, a visit our website link, and an email us link. The app is going to have its own backend created using a Firebase real-time database. And so users can log out, they can register, they can log in, and they can see their data update in real time across all their devices. Of course, the app is also going to work on all the different platforms: web, iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows. I'll also be covering all of the basics of Vue.js, including data binding, events, computed properties, components, directives, filters, rendering lists, and lifecycle hooks. I'll be covering all of the basics of Quasar, including how to use the CLI, Quasar components, Quasar plugins, Quasar directives, platform detection, layouts, theming, and various Quasar utilities. I'll be showing you how to manage the state of your app using Vuex, where I'll cover state, mutations, actions, and getters. I'll also cover all of the basics of Firebase, including user authentication, reading data, writing data, and protecting your data with database rules. This course is going to be most useful if you're developing on a Mac. Bear in mind that if you want to create iOS and Mac apps, then you'll need a Mac anyway. Well, we've got a lot to cover, so let's get started by first asking the question, what is Quasar? So what is Quasar? Well, it's a framework that sits on top of Vue.js. It allows you to create a Vue.js app with a single code base and deploy it to the web, as a single-page application, a progressive web app, or a server-side rendering app, to a mobile app using Cordova, both iOS and Android, and to a desktop app using Electron for Mac, Windows, and Linux. It also comes with a huge library of components. You can find documentation and code examples for all these components on the Quasar site. So you can just copy and paste the code just straight into your app. And there's tons of stuff on there. Buttons, tabs, all the different form elements you're likely to need. Almost anything you'll need for most apps, really. It has a bunch of different utilities, such as inbuilt date formatting and the ability to create UIDs. It has hot reloading on all devices, which means that when you save your work, you see the change instantly without the whole page reloading. And this works not just in the browser, but also when you're developing mobile and desktop apps as well. It has platform detection built in, which means that, for example, you can show a particular element on mobile and then show a different element on desktop. Or you can fire a particular block of code only on mobile and then fire a different block of code on desktop. It has great documentation and support. There's a forum and a Discord chat group, both of which are fairly active, so you can get help if you get stuck. So who is Quasar for? Well, it's for anyone who wants to create a Vue.js app on many different platforms with minimum hassle, while avoiding having to maintain multiple code bases and Git repos. So I have an app called Fudge, which is available for iOS, Android, Mac and Windows. And I built this app before Quasar, and this is what my project looked like. So first of all, I had a code base for the mobile app, which had its own Git repo, and I would use the Cordova CLI to generate the iOS and Android versions of the app. Then I had a desktop app, which had its own Electron code base, its own Git repo, and I would use the Electron CLI to generate the Mac and Windows versions of the app. In addition to that, I had another code base, which was the core app code base, which had its own Git repo, which was a submodule of the other two repos. So what did this mean? Well, it meant there was a lot of sadness in my life. But since using Quasar, my projects look more like this. I have a single Quasar codebase, a single Git repo, and for the most part I just use the Quasar CLI to generate all the different versions of the app. And now life is a lot better. So, what is Vue.js? It's a powerful front-end JavaScript framework. It's similar to React and Angular, and takes the best of these frameworks, and in my opinion it's easier to learn and use. It can be used to add functionality to existing web pages. So you can take any web page, create a little Vue.js widget and throw it on the page. But it can also be used to power an entire single page application, which means everything is controlled by Vue.js, including the routing, as in navigating from page to page, etc. And this is the way that Quasar uses Vue.js. A Vue.js single-page application is made up of Vue component files, and each Vue component file generally contains 3 different sections. The template section, where all your HTML goes, the script section where your data and methods, etc. go, and a style section where all your CSS styles will go. So here we have a simple Vue component, and you can see the 3 sections I mentioned before. The template section, where your markup goes, which just currently has a div and an empty paragraph. The script section and the style section. Now if you look at the script section, we have this data function which returns an object. Now the basic idea of Vue.js is that everything that happens within the interface or within the view is controlled by properties which you set inside this data object. In other words, you don't have to grab elements in the template and modify them directly. You only make changes to the data object down here. So I have a property called message here with a string and some text. So if I want to output this string, I can just put the name of the property message inside double curly braces. There we go, we see it on the page now. Now let's say we wanted to change this message. Well, if you were using jQuery or vanilla JavaScript, you would have to grab this paragraph element by using an ID or a class and then modify it directly. But in Vue.js, all we need to do is change the property in the data object. Now let's say we want to be able to show or hide this paragraph. In vanilla JavaScript or jQuery, we would have to, again, grab the paragraph using a class or an ID and then apply styles to it directly. But in Vue.js, we can just add a data property to handle this for us. So I'll add another data property called showMessage, and I'll set this to true. Then we can just add a directive to the paragraph. In this case, a v-if directive. And this means that if this condition is true, condition inside here, show this element. Otherwise, don't show it. So what we can do is just put show message inside that v-if directive. Now if I set show message to false, then the paragraph disappears. Set it back to true, and it reappears again. Now let's say we want to add a button to show and hide this paragraph. I'll just stick a button on the page. If we were going to do this in something like jQuery, we would have to grab this button using an ID or a class, add a click event listener to it, and then within that event listener, we would have to then grab the paragraph using an ID or a class and then apply styles to it directly. But with Vue.js, what we can do is just add a click handler to the button. And then within that click handler, we can just modify this show message property by doing show message equals the opposite of show message. In other words, if it's true, then set it to false. Or if it's false, then set it to true. Let's just see if that's working. Yeah, that seems to be working. Now let's say we wanted to do a bit more than just this single line of JavaScript. Let's say we wanted to execute several different lines. Well, we could just call a method instead. So I'm going to cut that out and instead enter the name of a method. In this case, I'm going to call it toggle message. And we can create this method down here in the methods object. So toggle message. And I'll paste in the code I cut before. Now, if we're making changes to the data properties within a method, then we need to add this dot to the start of each data property, like so. Okay, so that's working. But this time we're calling a method instead of executing JavaScript directly inside this click handler. Now, if we want to add style to our component, that's really simple. We can just do that in the style section here. So I'll set the paragraph to color red. Now, there's a hell of a lot more to Vue.js than just this, and I'm going to cover it all in detail later on. This is just a really quick overview, just to give you an idea of what it's all about and how powerful it is. Welcome to this course module. So now that we know a little bit about what Vue.js is, a little bit about what Quasar is, we're going to actually get started with Quasar. First of all, we're going to install all the dependencies, so Node.js, the Quasar CLI, and then we're going to use the Quasar CLI to create a Quasar project and get it running in the browser. Then we're going to dive around the folder structure a little bit. Now, if you don't have Node.js installed, then you're going to have to install that first. So you want to jump over to Node.js.org. You probably want to install the one on the left here, which is the stable version. I already have that installed, so I'm not going to do that. But once that's installed, we then want to install the Quasar CLI. So you want to jump over to the Quasar website, which is quasar-framework.org. Now, at the time I'm recording this, version 1 of Quasar is still in beta. So I have to click this red Go to V1 beta link here. But you might not need to. Then we want to click on Get Started. And you can see here there are 3 different ways of using Quasar. We're going to use it the Quasar CLI way. So you want to click on Quasar CLI, then install Quasar CLI, and we have some installation instructions here. If you already have a previous version of Quasar CLI installed, you'll have to uninstall it first with this command. But we're just going to install it. So you want to jump over to your terminal and run npm install-g at quasar/CLI. Now in my case, I need to run sudo on this command, but you might not need to depending on your node setup. So let's just run that. Enter our password. Okay, Quasar CLI is now installed, so let's create our first project. Let's create our first Quasar project. So you can see some commands down here for creating a new Quasar project. At the time I'm recording this, version 1 of Quasar is still in beta, so I need to run this second command. Quasar create folder name -b dev. But if Quasar version 1 has been released, then you'll need to run this command. Just Quasar create and then your folder name. But I'm going to run this one here. So I'm going to jump back to the terminal. You want to make sure you're in the folder where you want to keep all of your projects. And I'll just run Quasar create, and then the folder name, I'm going to call it awesome-to-do-b dev. Project name, I'll keep that as it is. Product name, I'll put in awesome to do. I'll leave the description, leave the author. I'm going to disable ESLint. I'm going to enable Vuex because we're going to be using that. Press enter. I'll leave the Cordova ID as it is. And I'll choose yes, use npm. Okay, that project is created. You can see it tells us how to get started here. So we just want to cd into the folder and then run Quasar dev. Cd awesome to do and Quasar dev to get it running in the browser. Okay, that's now running in the browser. So you can see it's a very simple app with a very simple layout. We have a toolbar along the top and a sidebar or a drawer along the side. We can toggle this drawer by clicking this button in the toolbar. If we were to view this on a mobile device, then the drawer disappears and can be toggled again with this button. So let's have a little look at the folder structure of this Quasar project. So you can see the folder that we've created over here, awesome to do. I'm just going to drag that into my editor and we'll have a little look around the folder structure. So the main folder we're concerned with is this source folder. I'm just going to open that up. And inside there we have an app.vue file. This is the main Vue component of your app. And you can see this router view element here. That's where the layout of your app will be loaded. Which brings me to the layouts folder. This mylayout.vue file, this is the layout for the app. Now a layout is basically everything that surrounds the pages of your app. So in this case, that's the toolbar along the top and the drawer along the side. And within layouts, you load pages. So if you look at this router view element here, that's where your pages will be loaded. Which brings me to the pages folder. So in here we have an index.vue file. This is the Vue component for this page here, which just has this one image on it. We also have an assets folder where you can put images and stuff like that. Bear in mind that everything in this folder will be processed by Webpack, so images might be turned into base64 code. We have a boot folder where we put boot files. Now, a boot file allows you to execute code before the app starts up, and we will be adding a boot file much later on. We have a components folder where all your Vue components will go, a CSS folder with an app.style file where you can add global CSS styles in Stylus. I'm not very familiar with Stylus, so I'll be using SCSS to add styles later on. We also have a quasar.variables.style file where you can modify the colors of the theme of your app. So if I just change this primary variable to green, then we can see the app update here. I'll just change that back to what it was. We also have a router folder where all your routes will go. Basically, within this file, we assign URLs to Vue components, which will be the pages of our app. So to begin with, we just have a single route to the index.vue file page, which I showed you before. We also have a statics folder where shared assets such as images and fonts can go. Unlike the assets folder, files in here will not be processed by Webpack, so they'll just be used as they are. And then finally, we have a store folder. This is used by Vuex, and all of your Vuex store modules will go in there. And we'll get into that later on. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and leave a comment to let me know what you think. And if you're interested in the full course, click the link in the description. The next video in this series, I'm going to show you all of the basics of Vue.js.